Today, the ECB joins the mega rate hike club. Hi again, it's Martin Hill from Digital Finance Analytics, well, this post covering finance and problem news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, the European Central Bank has finally joined almost 80 international peers, including the US Federal Reserve and, of course, the Reserve Bank in Australia, in lifting rates this year to fight red-hot inflation after months of predicting such pressures would fade and it was all transitory. Consumer prices in the Eurozone have now risen by more than 4 times its 2% target. They've consistently underestimated the inflation in the zone and are in a major catch-up mode. But one problem in the euro area is the diverse nature of economies in the Union. To try to cope with this, alongside the rate rise, they also introduced the so-called transmission protection instrument. Kicking off a cycle of increases with an outsized hike shows the Governing Council is now acting on repeated pledges to set policy based on the incoming economic data. Since it last met on rates in June, inflation has continued to outpace expectations. It's now headed towards 10%, and officials face a struggle to bring it back to the target, even over the medium term. So the ECB raised its key interest rate by 50 basis points. That's the first increase in 11 years, and the biggest since 2000, as it confronts surging inflation, even as recession risks mount. Price pressures are spreading across more and more sectors, worsened by a weakening euro, Lagarde told reporters in Frankfurt. Most measures of underlying inflation have risen further, and we expect inflation to remain undesirably high for some time. Thursday's rate move aligns the ECB with a global push to tighten and ends an 8-year experiment with sub-zero borrowing costs. The ECB said in a statement that further normalization of interest rates will be appropriate at upcoming meetings, prompting traders to step up wages on the pace of tightening. The front-loading today of the exit from negative interest rates allows the Governing Council to make a transition to a meeting-by-meeting approach to interest rate decisions, it said, refraining from guidance on the size of future hikes. With Italy enduring a fresh bout of political turmoil, President Christine Lagarde and colleagues also unveiled a tool they hope will ensure markets don't push up borrowing costs too aggressively in vulnerable economies, as happened in 2012 when the euro's very existence was questioned. As these steps are implemented, it said it will establish the transmission protection instrument, which, quote, can be activated to counter unwarranted disorderly market dynamics. Purchases aren't restricted ex ante. All euro area members are eligible, and the Governing Council alone will decide whether the TPI is used, taking into account, quote, multiple indicators, including compliance with European Union fiscal rules. The TPI will avoid interference with the appropriate monetary policy stance, suggesting bond purchases will be offset. Some country-specific risks can still be addressed by an older instrument, the outright monetary transactions. And the Governing Council would rather not use the TPI, but it wouldn't hesitate to do so if required. Thursday's hike in the deposit rate to 0% was twice the amount telegraphed until just 4 days ago, and was predicted by only 4 out of 53 economists. And Lagarde signalled a 25 basis point shift for weeks before officials familiar with the talks on Tuesday that an increase of double would be debated. While a bigger move was agreed on, a small number of ECB officials initially favoured a quarter-point rise. The central bank faces a tougher task than most. On top of setting monetary policy for 19 economies, the threat of a recession is greater as the war in neighbouring Ukraine pushes up food and fuel costs, while a rising dollar leaves the euro flirting with parity. When the ECB last raised rates in 2008 and 2011, it soon turned back. Germany, Europe's largest economy, is particularly at risk due to a greater reliance than most on natural gas from Russia, which has limited supplies in response to Western sanctions over its invasion. Flows through the Nord Stream pipeline, though, did resume on Thursday after maintenance, bringing some relief to markets, but not at full capacity. But as that happened, Euro area political risks came to the fore with the resignation of Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, actually Lagarde's predecessor. Banks will welcome the move to exit negative rates, of course, as it will boost their profitability. The only remaining countries with sub-zero policies are Japan, Switzerland, and Denmark. So once again, we see this trend to putting rates up, getting more aggressive. And of course, the fallout, well, we'll have to wait and see. My suspicion is that we're in for further rounds of rate rises because inflation won't get snuffed out quickly. Not only were central banks behind the eight ball, but the sort of inflation they're trying to tackle isn't necessarily inflation that will be crimped quickly by rising interest rates. So this is going to play out over not weeks, but probably months and even years, which means that the cost of borrowing around the world, including in Australia and in New Zealand, will remain higher for longer than many people think. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.